and that's to study the brain, which is in in Crick's vision was the ultimate black box. And so 2 years later, our boy Moran Cerf dove into that and brought his sort of rock star vibe to the world of neuroscience, and it's been amazing. He was so much fun.
Incredible career so far. Before we dive in, because I want to talk about that, I want to make sure that our live audiences on Facebook and IG can hear us.
Yes, that is the question.
And also encourage them to ask their questions in the live feed so we can talk about them. We can respond to them. So if you've watched the episode, this is your opportunity to ask follow-up questions, go deeper on After Impact Live.
Yeah, and I like that, After Impact Live. And that really is, guys, that's our ideal, would be that we spend the time answering the questions that you guys have, the things that you're interested in. So if we could get a thumbs up, there we go. Okay, so people can hear us. Fantastic. And at some point, maybe we'll convince Lisa and Cindy that they don't have to be mute and that they can just speak. There we go. All right, a little sound out of those two. Yeah. Excellent. Awesome.
And just a reminder to our audience listening on the podcast, which is coming out a day after the official episode. If you want to engage on After Impact Live, you can do that. We should be doing it every day of episode launch. So you got to
which right now is Tuesdays.
That's right. You got to jump on that episode quick. It's coming out on the podcast early in the morning, around 6 a.m. So check it out and then join us for live.
Perfect. So, and if you guys are wondering why we do it in that order, and I'm gonna try something here because this really drives me. Nope, that's gonna end badly. Know thy limits. The reason that we release things early on the podcast is because right now, guys, we really, really need your help. We need you to go and rate and review the episodes on iTunes. And if you don't get down with iTunes, go on Stitcher. Our goal is to hit new and noteworthy and really build this community. We cracked the top 50 business podcasts on iTunes, which we're super, super excited about. But is there any spot other than number one, Agent Smith?
No.
I don't think there is. So that's our goal. Let it be stated. And we need your help. Obviously, we're never going to get there. So we will uphold our end of the bargain, which is to make content that hopefully is so good that it hurts just a little. Yeah. And what we need you guys to do is go, rate, review. And as is always my pitch to people, don't lie. Just tell the truth. If the content is awesome, please tell them it's awesome. And if it sucks, don't be afraid to tell them because we need to know.
Yeah, better.
Yeah, for sure. So please, guys, rate and review really, really helps. All right.
All right, let's dive in. I will echo what you said earlier. This is one of the best episodes I've ever been a part of. It was so fascinating. I think it's because it was really under everything he said, all of the studies and the ideas that he was bringing up through his experiences in neuroscience were underscoring everything that we talk about on the show and everything that we talk about as a company. Right?
Yeah, and I think, so I was re-listening to it, and in some ways I sound like a kid at a New Direction concert, or One Direction, Jesus, I'm giving my age away. I was just so geeked out to be talking to him, and you're right, he was so on point with the neuroscience behind why we're doing impact theory, and at one point, I even said something like, this is like a central thesis in my life and, the ability to escape the matrix and all that. And he said, let me say it in neuroscience terms. Mm-hmm. And then broke it down from, the perspective of what's actually happening neurologically in the brain. It was really fascinating. And was one of the things that made it so electrifying is he's a guy that, and he talks about this in the episode, he's a guy that said, I had already had so much success as a hacker. I had a very established career, but then I spent 5 years going after my PhD, being told by everybody that, hey, if you're going to go into science, just think of all those things that you're really excited about, from consciousness, free will, aliens, dreams, all of those things that really, really excite you. Don't do any of those. Right. And that's how you're going to erode your credibility as a neuroscientist. And then he met Crick. And Crick was into all that stuff, and he was chasing all those things that, as a kid, he just found utterly fascinating. And that gave Moran the courage to begin chasing some of that stuff. And some of his earliest work was in imaging dreams, which is like this whole thing that I'm sure we'll get into later in the episode. But the fact that he's chasing all this stuff that, the kid inside of us wants to learn about and wants to take seriously, and that's why I wore this shirt, which is a Batman shirt in honor of my boy, because what he's doing in neuroscience is really saying, okay, here are the things that I find fascinating. Whether it makes other people think less of me or not is totally irrelevant to me. I'm willing to put all of my energy, my heart, my soul, and the seriousness with which I take scientific endeavor into things that I find fascinating. And if that happens to be aliens, if it happens to be dreams, then so be it. But I will apply scientific rigor to it. And that's how I feel, obviously, about mythology, and we've talked a lot about that. And to me, you know, Batman, Superman, Deadpool, whoever it is, it's modern day mythology, and there's so much of that that we can use for real in our lives if we're willing to take it seriously.
Yeah, and why is it important for people to try to think in that way? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in their careers or as an entrepreneur because they think they have to follow this certain path, right? This path that is the traditional way, that you have to work up to something. You're not worthy to go and study time travel yet because you haven't even finished your PhD, so you can't go there, right? But he did away with all that and said, no, if I follow things that excite me, I'm actually going to excel more because I'm going to be more invested. So how do people get into that state of mind?
Into the positive or the negative?
Into the positive.
Well, I think the easiest way to understand that is to look at the negative and say, okay, how do we end up there, right? How do we end up not being willing to take those risks? Because it's essentially bravery that allows you to push beyond that. And the reason that people don't take it seriously, or they're afraid to pursue those things that most excite them, that ignite that sort of childlike passion, is because they're unsure. And when you certainty is intoxicating, right? And I talked about that in my book review of Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, where Phil Knight, one of the most powerful quotes in the book was that belief is intoxicating, and that what people go for in a salesperson is to see their own belief, and that what they're buying isn't the shoe, they're buying that guy's belief in that running is a better thing and that this is a better running shoe. And so when people balk at really pursuing something that they're excited about, when other people are telling them that they're crazy, is they're afraid they really are crazy. They're afraid that they really will look stupid. They're afraid that nothing will come of it. And it's our own inability to see past the definition, or to not be able to see that we're existing inside this confine, which is somebody else's definition of who we are, right? So even like if you go back and watch Inside Quest episodes, I really just dabbled in wearing my personality on the outside. And you can even see that develop over time. So in the beginning, it was much more sort of fashion forward. It was really conservative. You know, sort of what the fashion community would say, okay, yeah, you're not taking a lot of risks there. And then I would start wearing brightly colored shoes, and then I might hint at like my fascination with comic books in a shirt or something. Yeah. And now that I don't have to worry about being associated to any other brand, one of the edicts in doing impact theory was this is going to be me turned inside out, right? I was going to be completely, not just authentic, because everything in Inside Quest was authentic, but to be aggressively yourself, because I'm not representing a brand here per se. I'm representing myself and building the brand around that. So because now I'm stepping outside the construct of what other people are going to think of me or what a brand needs or whatever, you really can begin to express yourself, because I don't care what people think. I don't care what they're going to say. I don't care what it represents to them. I see it as the bat symbol in the sky, right? I want to call out to the people who think like I think and collect those people. So it really does empower you when you're willing to look beyond that construct, that you're not going to be defined by wanting other people to see you a certain way, that you really want to align what you hope people will take away from you with what you really want to be and become and what you're working towards. So, what Moran has really shown is that applies to every endeavor. And whether that's, I think that the scientific community is incredibly political. I think it's incredibly dangerous, actually, the way that they go about it in terms of slowing down scientific progress, because they're so hard on people that step outside of what's considered, known, or all the things that we really understand. And Moran gives a really great example of this in the episode, and he says, what's going on in neuroscience right now is we're having this revolution where we realize that voice in your head that you believe is you is but one of many voices in your head, and it's not the most important. It's not even the central voice in your head. And in fact, most of the things that are going on in your mind that create the decisions that you make and all of that stuff, They're not the voice that you consider yourself. And he said, 400 years ago when Galileo pointed a telescope at the moons of Jupiter and realized, hey, wait a second, they're not moving the way that they're supposed to be, and the only way for me to reconcile what I'm actually observing is to make the sun the center of the solar system and to make Earth the third planet from the sun. And even though that was considered, heresy and a dethronement of all of mankind, he said the math dictated it. And so, what am I supposed to do with that? And so he had the courage to do it and to say, well, this is the sort of mathematical truth of the situation. And I think Moran has that same ability to break free of what everybody wants to believe is true, which is that singular voice that we see as being us as the only voice and that we're in control of everything. But just like in admitting that we really are the third rock from the sun, and that we revolve around the sun versus the other way around, that all of a sudden you can really see what's going on and you can really begin to explore the cosmos. He said the same thing is going on inside of us. And once we accept that it's one voice among many, we can actually begin to understand ourselves. We can actually begin to understand our decision-making process. So it's bravery and a willingness to stand outside that construct.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. I love that he drew that connection back to Galileo, and I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I wanted to talk about. So let's go a little bit deeper on that. So why?
Oh shit, we haven't gone deep, dude. Agent Smith is like going all in. All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Why? Let's bring it back to the individual, the people watching this show. Why should that notion about the multi-voiced self be empowering instead of frightening to people?
Wow, that's a really good question. And here's why I think it's an amazing question. Because every day is a battle with the multiple voices in your head. And when you recognize them for what they are, which are separate parts of your brain offering up evolutionarily advantageous behaviors, and then you can put yourself in the context of, I'm in modern times, and how many of these voices now serve me? And I don't mean voices like in a schizophrenic way where it actually, you hear one voice is like a 14-year-old girl and another's like a 9-year-old man. It's
right.
Not that experience, and if that is your experience, you should probably seek help. But you get these really strong feelings in opposing directions. Like one minute you feel strong, you feel sturdy, secure, you know who you are, you know what you're going after, and the next minute you feel weak and vulnerable and uncertain, and you're like, what is happening? Like, how can I swing so dramatically in such a short period of time? And that's what Moran is talking about when he says that you've got these different voices, or when you put somebody in a machine that's measuring their brain waves and you ask them, do you want steak or fish, is the example that he uses, and they say they want steak, and then he can reveal later that he actually influenced that decision even though people are utterly convinced that it was their own. Once you understand the mechanisms that the brain uses to navigate the world, then you can, the voice that you identify as you, the one that's sort of the highest level cognition, that's the executive function, we'll call it. Like once you understand all of the things that are working beneath the surface to influence that person, if you will, I used air quotes just so everyone knows. I don't think it's the homunculus, I think is what they call it. But once you realize that person or that voice, however you want to think of it, is being dramatically and persistently influenced by the subconscious, you can take control of it and you can run it against a bias filter or whatever, or even just put in mechanisms to counteract it. Like one of the things that I do is if I come across a book, an article, whatever, that challenges something that I believe, I force myself to read it because and read it with an open mind, by the way, and not to read it like, oh, what do these dumbasses know? To read it and ask myself the question, what if this were true? What would that change? Would it open opportunity for me? So, it's really understanding that stops you from falling prey. And we're being signaled wildly here.
I think we have an audience question.
A couple audience
Nice.
questions. So since we're talking about the voices, I'll start with Jay Stovell wants to know, how would you go about moving the positive voices to the forefront?
So the question is, how would you go about moving the positive voices in your mind to the forefront?
Yeah, I'm going to encourage everybody to go research a guy named Mark Devine, at Mark Devine. He's the guy that taught me how to meditate. He's a Navy SEAL. He's just a all-around badass dude.
He was on Inside Quest.
He was on Inside Quest. A great guest, great human being, somebody that I've actually run into since then, just out in the world, and I see what he's pursuing, and he's a mental warrior as much as he is a physical warrior. Really, really good dude. And what he talks about is the courage wolf and the fear wolf. And it's a great metaphor because you can, when it's an animal like that, you can understand that the one that's fed is the one that grows strong. And so if you feed the fear wolf, then the fear wolf will get more powerful. And if you feed the courage wolf will get more powerful. And to use Tony Robbins' language, which is much more closely tied to a direct way that the brain actually rewires itself, which is through myelin. And if you don't know myelin, you're going to want to look it up. And this is a fatty tissue, I guess, would be the qualification for it, that the brain wraps around connecting synapses that I think helps conduct electricity faster. So literally, you're able to think faster, and that's when people say that they're hardwiring the brain. That's what they mean. Is you're really making these amazing connections. So Tony Robbins calls it building a superhighway. You're going to build a superhighway to something, and you can build a superhighway to gratitude, to fulfillment, or you can build a superhighway to fear and anxiety. And the highway is built simply through repetition. And I really, really want people to listen to that. It is simply through repetition.
I think Moran says 8 times in the interview.
That has to do with marketing, and we can talk about that in a minute. But is almost certainly following this exact mechanism.
Right.
And what's happening is through repetition, you're creating this speedy connections between things. So let's say, the one that everyone fears, public speaking. So you think about public speaking, and you just, nothing's coming up for you. You don't have any plans to public speak, but you're sitting there thinking about public speaking and how embarrassing it would be if everyone laughed at you, or like how much it would suck to fail, or like, God, it would be so embarrassing if you flubbed a word, or what if your mind went blank? You're not stressing about it, but what are you reinforcing? You're reinforcing a vision of you up there failing, and you're going through the 1,000 different ways that it would suck if you failed. And I find myself doing that all the time. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why? And ask yourself this question. And I know I'm going to tell you the answer. The answer to the question I'm about to ask is because it makes you feel like a douchebag. Okay? Now the question is, why don't you imagine yourself crushing it? Why don't you imagine the 1,000 ways that it could go right? Why don't you imagine people in the audience standing up and clapping and screaming your name and running up to you crying because they think of you like the kid from New Direction, right?
One Direction.
God, I really was New Direction a band when I was a kid or something?
New Kids on the Block. I think we're good.
All right, there we go. New edition. I'm smashing them all together here. So even now, I'm going to replay this in my mind where I got it right, and it was amazing, and people were cheering for me, instead of the fact that I've gotten it wrong twice already. So people don't replay it going well. So they're creating this neuronal superhighway between speaking and being embarrassed, between speaking and failing, and so that's how it becomes this just absolutely paralyzing, terrifying thing. Whereas if they spent that same amount of time constantly stopping themselves, doing what Dr. Daniel Amen calls ants, automatic negative thoughts. So he said, crush the ants. So you want to crush the automatic negative thought and replace it with an automatic positive thought, so that you're constantly daydreaming about the way that things are going to go well, about how they're going to go right, so you're reinforcing that in your mind.
And how do you crush those negative thoughts? What are some tactics that you can use?
Literally just stop them. So the second you...
Do you write them down?
I don't. That's not been a technique I've used. Maybe some people have used that to great effect, but my gut instinct is if you're dwelling on it by writing it down, that you're just reinforcing it, and that is probably better if you're going to write anything down. The moment you think of something negative, write something positive. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do. When I recognize that I'm having a negative thought, that I'm rehearsing something going wrong in my mind, I stop and I force myself to rehearse it going right.
Right. I think we have another audience question from our Facebook Live or Instagram Live.
So this one comes from Facebook. They're kind of in the same vein, so I'm going to push them together. So Moran so effectively clarified that and made actionable some of my favorite works. This is from Ian, Sam Harris, Alan Watts, Tony Robbins. Interesting that he brought up ethics as well. So what would be the ethical concerns in shaping identity? Is it a useful tool or a potential hindrance?
I think if you're shaping your... do you want to...
So I think the gist of the question is, are there ethical concerns around shaping your identity?
Yeah, so I don't know that there's... I'll just say there's no ethical concerns with shaping your own identity. There may be deep and terrifying ethical concerns to the actions that emanate from the identity that you create, so you need to be very careful with that. But there are massive ethical concerns from shaping somebody else's mentality. And because that is literally what we're trying to do with impact theory, we are actually trying to shape people's mentality. And Cindy thinks I should relate it to free will, and so remind me if I don't bring it around. But when I think about what I hold myself to, the standard, to make sure that we don't fall into some weird ethical gray area, is the same that I hold myself to when I think about selling. The only way I can get behind selling is if I truly believe, that product somehow makes that person or the world a better place. And if it does that, then I will go hard to sell it. And I will use every technique I can think of to get people to believe in, to get behind, to be excited about, to like the price, to whatever. And if you haven't read the book Nudge, read it. There are really even just small things you can do. Moran talks about one of them, $6.99 is very different than $7. Right. So small things like that to nudge people in a given direction. I think all of it's ethical if at your absolute core you believe that it's empowering, that it will do good by people and do good by the world as a whole. And I think if that's your, the guiding principle, then the only thing that we really have to fear is mental illness, and I don't think there's ever a way around that. To bring it back to free will, do I see them being connected? Not really. I think we're going to have to address free will as a separate thing, but that did make me think about something that I wanted to cover when I was watching the episode, which was selling, getting inside people's minds. I've lost it.
That's all right. I got a question related to free will and self-narrative, which is a big theme in the interview. So Moran talks about all of these studies, right, in which they can predict people's behaviors and their decisions, which sort of bursts the illusion of free will. And then yet, I think the rest of the episode, you both talk about how you're able to create a self-narrative that's going to determine your decisions and help you sort of become the person you want to be. So how is this idea of free will not being something that we possess, how is this not devastating for people, and how can we change our thinking around that?
It's interesting. So here's how I think about free will, and it may be a little bit different than Moran thinks about it. I think free will is irrelevant. I don't think it matters, and nothing in my life would change whether I have free will or I don't. And if you carry back the concept of free will far enough, I think you'll see that it can't possibly exist if you allow me the butterfly effect, right? So that doesn't mean that in any moment I'm not deciding something for myself, but the question is, what made me? And once you start backtracking, right? So I would be very different, for instance, if my parents had beaten me. I'd be very different, for instance, if my parents showed no love and no affection. I would be very different if I didn't read. I would be very different if 1,000 different things had occurred to me, right? And there's as many variations on the human growth experience as there are people, right? Every trajectory to adulthood, I think, is entirely unique, even identical twins. So if you accept that you are, to some extent, and I would say to a very large extent, the result of your perspective, and that your perspective is shaped oftentimes by things outside of you, if you take that back far enough, then I think that free will is an illusion. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't impact you in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter to me that the person that I am today is a result of all the experiences that I've had, and that many, 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 many of those experiences were outside of my control. I feel like right now I can decide what direction I want to be moving in. I can decide whether I want fish or steak. I could change my mind. So because I feel empowered to course correct and determine where I want to go, I'm not as worried about what the subconscious processes are that make me desire one thing over the other, right? Because even that I feel like we can take hold of. And you can, like when changing what I built my self-esteem around felt like I had recoded the matrix. It was so fundamental to what I valued, what I felt chemically, where I wanted to go, how I viewed myself. Like it was really, for any programmers out there, it was kernel level. Right? You've gone about as deep as you're going to be able to go and really make deep, deep changes to the code of the way you think. So that was really, really powerful. And because I feel that I have the ability to do that, nothing else matters. So whether that's free will or not is irrelevant.
And jumping off that, how do you make those changes? I mean, is it about just becoming, does it start with self-awareness, or what's the deep work that you're doing to really get down to that kernel level and recode yourself in the matrix?
So I play a game called No Bullshit, What Would It Take? All right, so no bullshit, what would it take? Let's say that you are, you're outside my house right now, and you want to get in. No bullshit, what would it take? Go.
Me?
Yep.
I'm outside your house and I want to get in.
Yep, that's it.
I want to break
Your
in.
wife's life depends on you getting in the next 4 minutes.
Oh, I mean, I'm picking the locks, I'm breaking windows.
You're not starting with the lock, right? Because you don't know how to pick a lock.
4 minutes.
You have 4 minutes.
Yeah, I'm breaking windows.
Right?
Yeah.
You pick something up, you smash through the fucking window.
Rock, yeah.
So done, right? Yeah. No bullshit. But if I force you to deal with the construct of, hey, this is my house, I'm going to get pissed off, and by the way, your wife's not in here dying, and you just actually want in, what are you going to do? You're going to knock.
Yes.
Right? You're going to stand outside my house, you're going to knock. If I don't answer the door, you're going to go to the window.
Find a loose window, yeah.
Right. You'll check. But you're going to, you're so limited by social constructs when the answer is actually really simple. And if the stakes were high enough for you to get in, you'd get in, and you'd get in really fast. So for me, to get down to the kernel level is all about identifying, where is the no bullshit answer, right? To, I need to make this change. So I'll walk you through what really happened with me when I finally moved away from thinking of myself as smart and I started thinking of myself as being a learner. Was I had a stated goal to get rich. And I wanted to get rich. Here I was as an entrepreneur and trying to work my way up in the company. And it wasn't working. And I was constantly trying to convince people that my way was the right way, even when I knew that it wasn't the right way. And one day it actually worked. And I convinced people of a bad idea. And I knew that by them agreeing to my way, we were actually going to move slowly or more slowly or move in the wrong direction. And so I had a real epiphany at that moment because I thought, oh my God, you need to really assess your behavior. What you're doing right now isn't in alignment with your goals. You just worked really hard to convince people to go in the wrong direction. So what is it that's actually motivating you? Stop BSing yourself. What's really motivating you? And I realized that what I was being motivated by was a desire to feel good about myself. And that was actually the thing that made me want to be rich as well. I thought being rich would make me feel good about myself. And I'll just tell you right now, it's not going to. And you can be rich and miserable. You can be poor and happy. And the two aren't tied. That doesn't mean that money isn't amazing. It is. But they just aren't tied. And until you figure that out, you're really, really in trouble. So I realized, okay, I'm acting in accordance with the desire to feel good about myself. Okay, well then if that's my primary driver, if that sits below everything, a desire for self-esteem, which I actually think should be, and people should feel good about themselves, then I need to switch what I build my self-esteem around because it is a construct and it's built around something. And right now it's built around the notion of being smart. Well, let's let go of that because I'm just not that smart and I'm wrong a lot. So rather than build my self-esteem around that, build it around learning, and that changed everything.
That's super powerful. I want to bring it back to Moran, and I want to read a quote from the episode.
Nice.
So he says, the mistake I made wasn't to say something is possible when it was not. It was to say something is impossible before I knew it. So can you just respond to that quote? I mean, I know it impacted you in real time in the episode, as it did everyone watching, but how important is that realization?
I want everybody listening to this, if you're driving in your car, I want you to pull over. And I need you to pull over because Jared is going to read this quote one more time and your life is going to be changed. And if your life isn't changed, you're not listening or you're dead inside.
All right,
take it away.
He says, the mistake I made wasn't to say something is possible when it was not. It was to say something is impossible before I knew it.
All right, I have to tell the story. So for those of you that haven't watched the episode, watch it because I'm going to just bastardize his tale, and this is really amazing. And this, you'll see me freak out in the episode, and this is where I stopped and shake his hand, right? Because I was just like, dude, anybody that can switch on a dime like that and realize I was wrong, and there's a way more powerful way to think, you're my kind of person. But here's how it went. He had spent 5 years working on his PhD, and he was obviously in neuroscience, looking into the brain, what's possible, and he was doing this thing that sort of hinted at that we might one day somehow be able to record dreams. And he was just exhausted, and he'd finally put in his thesis, and a reporter called and woke him up, and he was, sort of in that daze that you're in when you first wake up, and they asked him something along the lines of what he was working on or whatever, and he said that, he was working on this thing that sort of hinted at you could monitor dreams. And so they said, so you're telling me that you can record dreams? And in his sort of half-asleep state, he said yes. And then it went viral. The reporter hung up, Moran realized his mistake and realized how it was going to be interpreted, and it just spread like wildfire, and it went everywhere. And people were calling him, phone ringing off the hook, saying, that scientists now were saying that we can record dreams. And I actually remember reading the article, by the way, and thinking, whoa, like that's kind of freaky. And I was thinking about how it's going to be used in like the court systems and stuff. And he tried frantically to backtrack, to tell people, no, that's not what I meant. And he woke me up. Yeah, because he's like, oh, I'm going to lose my credibility. Right. Like, this isn't possible. There's no way you can do it. And he spends 3 years trying to convince people that it isn't possible. And then a reporter, in fact, the first reporter from the BBC calls him up and says, we want you to comment on recording dreams. And Moran is like, come on, man, you've got to be kidding. Like, you guys all but tanked my reputation. Like, this is crazy. I've spent the last 3 years trying to rebuild my credibility. And they said, no, we understand that you don't believe that it's possible, but there's a guy in Japan doing it right now. And I think Moran's world changed at that moment. Now, he had two choices. He could yell heresy. He could say it's not possible, keep, double, triple down on his stance that, no, you really can't do this. Or he could do what he actually did, and he opened his mind, and he went and started working with the guy and realized, I made a critical error. And like he says in the quote, my critical error wasn't to say that something was possible that wasn't. It was to believe something is impossible when I don't know. And there's an amazing, amazing quote, and I'm blanking on who it's by right now, but I think I remember now. It's Michio Kaku. And Michio Kaku says, he's a famed physicist. Michio Kaku says, I love talking about science fiction because science fiction plays this incredibly important role in society, and that role is to capture people's imaginations. And man, I cannot tell you that enough, to capture people's imaginations. If you want to know why at Impact Theory we are so hell-bent to create traditional narrative, but traditional narrative that's on the back of really empowering ideology, is because we want to teach people not only how to dream, but how to turn that science fiction, and it's not all going to be science fiction, but to turn that science fiction into science fact. And so often it is the storytellers that point people in a direction, that tell scientists where to look, that really paint a compelling vision of the future that people get excited about, they get behind, and then they go and do the research and they make it real. And one of the things that I want to do on the company side of things is I want to tell people what I'm struggling with in my life, because I know there's an entrepreneur out there right now who's going to make this shit a reality. And I will tell you right now, there is a huge business opportunity, and anybody that thinks they can deliver on this, I want you to contact me immediately. I'm either going to buy you, I'm going to fund you, I'm going to mentor you, something. But I'm going to get involved with anybody that can do ultra high quality. You hear me saying that right? I'm not saying better than what's out there. I'm saying ultra high quality direct to garment printing. If you can do ultra high quality direct to garment printing, you have $1 billion business, and I want to talk to you. But that's me, right? I'm throwing out science fiction right now. That's science fiction. It doesn't exist. I fucking looked everywhere for this. But I know out there right now is somebody, they're a dreamer. They're in Oklahoma. Nobody knows who they are. They're a 14-year-old kid, and they're going to get the local university to let them come in, and they're going to transform the direct-to-garment industry. Why? Because they're like the guy in Japan who heard that scientists were recording dreams and never heard the retraction. And so now, simply because he thinks it's possible, he's going to actually do it.
And I'm really glad you brought it back to entrepreneurship, because I think this is a really important lesson. Another way to say what Moran is saying is, don't give up. Exhaust every single possibility until you are absolutely certain that that big dream you have is not possible.
And can we go a step further? Because I said in the episode, Moran, I won't be happy until you tell me that anything is possible. And he acquiesced, maybe acquiesced light. He didn't go too hard, but I think that he got it. The real truth here isn't don't give up. It's accept that it is your failing. Now, there's a subtle difference there. What I mean by that is accept that it is possible. Know it to the core of your being. Your goal isn't to exhaust your efforts and prove that it's impossible. Your goal is to believe to the core of your being that it is possible. So if you haven't figured it out yet, you don't know some key piece of information. You haven't learned something. And the reason I want people to be open to that is because they should be looking for collaborators. They should be looking for people that can give them that one bit of idea. It doesn't need to be you. You don't have to be the one to come up with it, right? Like, don't pride yourself on that. That's such a fool's errand. That's what really blew me away about Moran, was ego did not get in his way. Once he realized, oh my God, someone is doing it, that piece of knowledge changed his life. And it took him on a new trajectory. And he went from having wasted countless hours trying to convince people that something wasn't possible because he wanted to protect his ego, he wanted to protect his reputation, to going, what was I thinking? I want people to dream bigger. I'm going to dream bigger myself. I'm going to get other people to dream bigger, and I'm going to recognize the transference of energy between science fiction and science fact.
Yeah. All right. I think I need to repeat the quote one more time for our Facebook Live community. For IG. They want to hear it. So one more time. The mistake I made wasn't to say something is possible when it was not. It was to say something is impossible before I knew it.
Man, write that down. Write that down.
Put it on your
Read
wall.
that. Put it on your wall. I would say tattoo it if he'd ended it by saying and instead realize that anything is possible. But even I have that one caveat in my belief system where I say human potential is nearly limitless. So sometimes you throw things in like that just to keep people from thinking that you're totally out of your mind. But honestly, guys, please open yourself up to being changed. That is one of those parts of my belief system that's been so impactful. You have to let that quote change you. You have to reinforce it in your mind. You have to know that before you heard that quote from Moran Cerf, you were a different human being. If you can repeat that in your head and really think like that and see yourself now as fundamentally changed and go home and tell your significant other, hey, I heard this quote and it really changed me and I feel like a different human being and I'm going to act differently, and tomorrow actually get up and act differently and act in accordance with that quote, you'll be amazed at how much it actually impacts your life. This stuff works, but you have to do it. You have to really be willing to change.
That is the truth. All right, let's talk about storytelling.
Word.
That is a big theme of this episode. Obviously, it is relevant to Moran as well because he consults on a lot of TV shows and films. He discusses storytelling. We can reshape our past. We can tell ourselves stories about our memories. We can change our memories, and that's going to then change our identities. But I want to bring storytelling also to, how he talks about science fiction, how he talks about art and film and television, and back to really the sort of the mission of impact theory, because he actually says, this I think is a good jumping off point. He says that when you are watching a film, your brain starts to wire, or it starts to act in the way that the person on screen, in accordance with that person on screen. And then he even says that it goes back to the director or the creator of the film and how their brain was working. So how does that tie into the mission of impact theory and what we're trying to do with art and media to empower people?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite quotes. And it stopped me dead in my tracks. And I don't know who first said it, and I'd love if somebody drop into the comments if they know who first said it. We're looking for the originator here. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that was one of those truths that hit me on an intuitional level, right? Just at a gut level. I thought, that is so true. And when I think about how different my life is now versus when the 5 people that I was hanging out with were different, it really is astonishing. Now, you could say that it's correlation, not causation, until you start seeing the neuroscience of what you're just talking about. And you realize that when 2 human beings are vibing, and I know you guys have felt this, you've been in a talk where you just felt like time dilated, you were there, everything slowed down, you were in the zone with the person, right?
With someone.
Totally. And in fact, this is why one of the reasons, so the reason people take substances, alcohol, drugs, whatever, is to manipulate their brain chemistry, right? And there is something really fascinating about humans' absolute obsession with manipulating their brain chemistry. But so I rarely drink. And the only times that I enjoy drinking are when I'm with my wife. And if I really, really want to enjoy drinking, it would be just my wife and I alone. Why? Because we get in lockstep neurologically, and we're in a zone. And I feel like there is nothing in the world except that woman. And we're so in sync. And it's that feeling of being in sync that Moran is talking about, where you are neurologically firing in the same pattern as the person you're talking to. You feel understood, you feel heard, you hear them, you understand them. You are totally in sync, which is, of course, why they say that, because that's exactly what it feels like. Right. And in being in sync like that, you really begin to soak up their vibe. And if their vibe is empowering, you'll be empowered. If their vibe is negative, you'll be sucked down. So you really have to be careful about who you get in sync with. But to your point about why at Impact Theory we're so hell-bent to bring a new kind of narrative to the table that's built on a new kind of ideology is because of what Moran was saying, that as somebody's sitting there watching it, they're going to be in sync with that ideology. They're going to be in sync with the person on screen. They're going to be in sync with us behind the camera. And as long as, from an ethical standpoint, we're building it around an ideology that's empowering to them and empowering to the world, now it's like I can go hard for that. I can go hard to get people involved in that, to put every bit of my energy and enthusiasm into bringing this art into existence, into turning it into plush toys and t-shirts and all the things that we want to do to reinforce an ideology, to get you in sync, to help you stay in sync, to, one of the things that I really want people to start doing, and this is going to be one of the huge revenue drivers for us, is to rep what you believe, right? And you're going to see me all the time. I'm wearing things that express what I believe. And that's going to be our first wave of revenue, is we want to bring into the world things that represent a certain ideology that's empowering. Right now, today, as I'm wearing this shirt, when I look in the mirror, I'm not just looking back at me, Batman's looking back at me, right? And there's this whole meme going around like, hey, always be yourself. Unless you can be Batman, then always be Batman, right? But people laugh it off. But like, what if you took it seriously? What if you really said, okay, what does that mean? Like, okay, I don't have any superpowers, so I'm going to have to work super hard. I want to, bring light to the darkness. Batman is an idea, not a person. Like all this amazing stuff that's tied up in the mythology of Batman. What if I really brought that to my daily life? Which I do, by the way, and is one of the ways that I show up in the gym 5 days a week and I put that fucking work in, is because I want to see that staring back at me. I don't want to be embarrassed when Bruce Wayne's or Batman's eyes are staring back at me. And when you can, as a grown-ass man who is, successful and is trying to play at the absolute highest level, if you can take that seriously and really let it inform you and drive you, I really think you have a leg up. So that ability to read that stuff as serious and know how to put it to use in your life is what impact theory is. Like, that's our raison d'être. That's high school French coming in handy there.
That's nice.
Right, so
Cindy.
that quote was from Jim Rohn, from Sarah and
Jim Rohn. All right, Jim Rohn's the man. He's OG. So thank you.
And then the question is, how do you choose your tribe of 5 people, and how do you remove people from that tribe without coming across as a jerk?
Question is,
sorry.
How do you choose your tribe of 5 people, and how do you remove people from that tribe without being a jerk?
Yeah. So that's a multi-layered question. So let's start with, how do you remove people without looking like a jerk? So first, let go of worrying about whether you look like a jerk, because to the person you remove, I promise you're going to seem the dick. There's just no two ways about that. Yep, and don't lose sleep over it. Now, I believe people should be respectful at all times. I think you should fill yourself with joy in your heart, and I know that sounds stupid, but I actually try to do that. I try to fill myself with joy, with love for that person, and to want good things for them. And look, there have been people that have done me wrong in my life. Rewind everything I've ever said publicly, and look how often I bitch and moan. I don't. I bitch and moan about myself because I'm trying to push myself and hold myself to a higher standard. But even people who've attacked me or whatever, like, I get it. You know what I mean? I try to see from their perspective. I try to still want good things for them. And I do that because I don't want to focus on negative shit, right? Like, I don't want to focus on the anger or the hatred, and it doesn't mean that I don't feel it, right? And I think I've talked pretty openly about you have to know how to leverage the anger. You have to know how to leverage a chip on your shoulder. You have to know how to do that stuff. But you have to be really careful. And I find that people fill their hearts with that. They fill their hearts with rage. They fill their hearts with wanting to tear people down. And while it's leverageable, I never fill my heart with it. And you have to be super fucking careful about that. Want good things for the person that you're removing from your life. Don't be a jerk. Wish them well. Wish them nothing but the best. If they're open and they seek ideas for how they can improve, obviously offer it willingly. How you pick the 5 people that are going to that you want to be around, I'll say pick it from an ideological standpoint, like who are you trying to become, and find the people that are closest to that. So, if you're trying to be a world-class athlete, surround yourself with world-class athletes, or the closest you can get to it. If you're trying to be a world-class businessman, same thing. If you're trying to be the best mom ever, like surround yourself with either people that you know, or maybe teachers that have really shown themselves to really, really deliver results for kids. Whatever it is that you think is valuable, surround yourself with that. And then, as Moran says, when you can't actually get those people in your circle, then turn to articles, turn to books, turn to movies, turn to podcasts. Like, there are so many people out there right now pouring their heart and soul into creating just amazing content. And I'll give a couple shout outs here. Tim Ferriss. Every time I listen to his podcast, I'm just like, Tim, good Lord. Like the people that he has on and the way that he really goes into the how-to, like hyper executionary, and I'm not sure that's a word, by the way, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm blown away and think it's amazing. Lewis Howes, like super emotional, raw, vulnerable, right? Really, really inviting people into his journey. Art of Charm, like there's just so many amazing podcasts. And then Heckle Noah Kagan. He's just starting his podcast. I think it's going to be amazing, and I think that he has a unique entrepreneurial mind. And you know, letting those people be your over the years mentor. You know, the internet's changed everything. Take advantage.
Awesome. Let's talk about the future of brain science.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about, in the episode, Moran talks about how they're actually doing studies where they can identify the sections of the brain that are deteriorating through any sort of brain illness or disorder, and they're trying to plug in, or they're actually doing it, right? They're plugging in microchips that can replicate that process in the brain and help people live longer, better lives. The question is, would you do it if you could? If you needed to and you could, would you do it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. So first of all, I'm going to be a cyborg. Let's all just embrace the shit out of that. So yeah, I have no overly indulgent affinity for this meat suit, as Peter Diamandis calls it. I am a total embracer of technology. I consider myself a futurist. Am absolutely obsessed with what's going on with the X Prize and all of the cool technologies that they're trying to help bring to the forefront. So I would do it in a heartbeat, and I just want to express my eternal gratitude to the scientists that are out there. As a scientist, you know all you're ever going to contribute is one brick, right? And that at the end of the day, an edifice is made up of thousands, hundreds of thousands of bricks, and that what you're going to contribute is one. And it may be a keystone, right? It may be something off which everything else hangs, but at the end of the day, everyone gets to place one brick. And to give your life to that one brick is such a noble and beautiful endeavor that all of us have taken advantage of, from the people that created these microphones, to the internet, to the cameras, to the headphones, to the warmth in my house, to engineering. It's like we are literally standing on the shoulders of giants. And so I'm just eternally grateful. So anybody out there that's working on neuroscience right now, that's trying to move us towards a singularity, that's trying to get us to a point where we can transcend biology, I am eternally in your debt. And yes, I'm well aware that we have to be careful. And yes, I'm well aware that things could take a left turn and go horribly awry. But to me, technology is hope. And that, at the end of the day, is what it always has been and what it always will be. You're never going to be able to stop hope. People are always going to want to try and make our world more optimistic, more beautiful. And I trust that, with enough human minds around protecting ourselves from the downside, that we will get there and it will be amazing. So yes, I will be implanting chips. I won't be an early adopter. I'll be very, slow to make sure that stuff is tried and true, but yeah. I'm glad it's happening.
Cool. Cindy, do we have any more questions from the community?
So this is from IG. Ola It. Would you consider immersing yourself in ideas the likes of what IT is set up to promote regularly having the same kind of effect as that 5-person time you spend?
Yeah. So do we see impact theory as having the same kind of effect as actually spending time with the 5 people? I'm going to say it's more impactful, but it's going to require more effort, because now it's not about osmosis. Spending time around people is what Moran Cerf called osmosis. You're going to just get in sync with them neurologically from being around them, and it really will happen by accident. When you're spending time around other people that think like you think and they have an empowering mindset, it's just reinforced. And it's amazing. Like when I think about everyone here, right? That was one of the things that we hired for. We're looking for teammates that all have that empowering belief system. So when one of us slips, the other people are there. So we'll call that the by default effect. That is truly powerful, from it really being 5 people. But the one thing that those 5 people can't give you is a constant stream of newness. new ideas, you're limited by the time span of those 5 people. Whereas if you identify aggregators, content producers out there that are really going hard for that cake, whatever it is you're trying to do, whatever your passion is. My dad's passionate about cars, right? So if you're trying to get better at building classic cars, awesome, man. There's so many people out there putting out amazing content. You can drink deeply from that. I really think that, and the reason that we founded Impact Theory is we're going through this amazing age right now, which is the age of the entrepreneur. And it's people, not all of them are actually going to be successful entrepreneurs, and I don't care about that, and you're going to hear me keep saying that. And I just want to take some of the coolness of that word and give it to as many people as I can so that they can be stoked to learn and grow, which is at the end of the day what I think it's all about. And that's what, the entrepreneurial movement to me is about self-determinism, maybe more than anything. That's why people want to be their own boss. They don't want someone telling them what to do. And then I think it's a willingness to look at metrics and say, I'm either doing the right thing or I'm not. And you put those two things together, and it doesn't have to be aimed at a company. It can be aimed at being a better teacher. It can be aimed at being a better parent, whatever, better student, So that's my take.
I think we have one more question from the community.
Yeah, so this one's from Mickey. When you realized you wanted to start Impact Theory, did you make a physical list of actionable steps to make it happen?
So I'll repeat the question.
Yeah.
This is from Facebook Live?
Facebook Live.
All right.
What's
when you
Facebook?
realized, Tom, that you wanted to start Impact Theory, did you make an actual list of actionable steps you needed to take to get it off the ground?
All right, so I'm going to do something super indulgent that's more for the live crowd than is for the people listening later. But I want right now, everybody in the live stream, I want you to type one of 2 words, yes or no. And Cindy's going to give us a tally. So do you think I made an actual list, that I actually write down actionable items to get Impact Theory off the ground? Just type yes or no.
We're going to do a quick poll here.
We're going to do a
with
quick
our
poll.
live audience.
That's right.
And just to remind everyone
All right,
who's
type
listening
fast.
on the podcast, you're more than welcome to join our live audience, which is going to launch every day that the episode launches. So Tuesdays.
Yeah, I was going to say, you keep saying that all mysterious. Every Tuesday, we launch a new episode. You holding out on me?
Yeah,
you plan on changing it?
You don't know.
All right. You can't. Agent Smith has always got something up his sleeve here. All right. What do we have, Cindy? So that means that it's a mix. It's a mixed bag. People aren't sure. Agent Smith.
I have my answer.
14
I want to know.
yeses
14 yeses
and 1 no.
and 1 no. Okay, that was a lot of counting
Yeah.
for 1 no. What's your answer?
Yes.
More yeses coming
You
in.
think yes. Cindy, what do you think?
I would say no.
Okay, so Cindy went with no. So we have like 16, 17 yeses and 2 nos. So I'm absolutely terrified that Cindy doesn't think that I made a list. So if there's one thing I want to be abundantly clear, write your shit down. It isn't real until you write it down. It just isn't real until you write it down. Like if it's just floating in your head, do you know how much I write down? I write down everything. I have a literally an entire document just called Insights. I have a document, Awesome Quotes. I have a document for podcasts that I want to do. I have a document for blog posts that I want to do. I have my core belief system that I wrote down, which we need to put back up on Impact Theory. We had on Inside Quest. Literally, I'm trying to write down everything so that it's there. And maybe that's the advantage of having a terrible memory. But and by the way, somebody needs to call me on the fact that I reinforce that belief, because it's really stupid.
Stop saying that.
I do need to stop saying it. And the reason that I don't stop saying it, and this is where I'm conflicted, is I want other people to know I have a bad memory. So if you're impressed with my memory, then know that you could crush it, because chances are you're starting from way farther ahead than I am. So I write down everything, absolutely have a list, had it before we started, and have it and check it daily. And for those of you that pay attention to my morning routine, the first thing I do after I finish the workout, meditate, thinkitate, read, all that, is I go through my list of important things. And that just keeps you in check. I take notes on it, where I'm at, what I need to do next. I'm obsessive about it.
Yeah, I'm big on lists too, and I just want to recommend Asana, which is a great web app and also mobile app for list making. And
he's not paid to say that.
I'm not. It's all team collaboration and project management too, and I use it all the time. It's really handy.
And one thing I'll throw out right now, while I reserve the right to change tactics at any time, at this point we don't take any advertising dollars, we don't take any sponsorships, nothing. So when we recommend something, it's because we really believe in it. So you can trust, that, that's it. If we get behind something, you see me pimping a pair of shoes or something. It's just because I dig it. And yeah, we're pure for now.
That's right. For now. Anything else we want to discuss about this episode, Tom? Is there anything you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to?
No, man, I think we banged it out of the park in terms of touching on the amazing things that Moran said, and I just want to point everybody back to him, and what he delivered in this episode was just amazing, and it was one of those ones in real time. I said, I got to get you back. We have to be doing a second episode. I think Moran and I are going to be working close together. I'm going to be going out to the Kellogg School of Management, speaking to his students. Want to get him more involved in what we're doing. I think he could really help on the narrative side, making introductions to some key players, and that's something, by the way, that I really want everybody listening, especially if you're entrepreneurial minded, always be making moves, right? You should always have something in the pipeline, lines in the water, as Strahan calls it. You need to throw lines in the water. You need to be pushing things forward, and having the courage to say to Moran, hey, I really hit it off with you. I think you're amazing. What can we do together? And ask him for introductions and trying to make things happen. And we're trying to put something together right now where he mentions in the episode wearing, I think it was a brainwave monitor. I forget what it's called, and I should know this. And they then track like fulfillment and things self-reported, and then they match it back against the actual brainwave patterns that they saw. And so I'm trying to get him to do that with me, which would be really, really amazing. And we document the whole thing. That'd be really great. And shout out to one Elizabeth Bilyeu for that idea, which I think is brilliant. So yeah, really, guys, go watch him. This episode was killer.
Agreed. 100%.
Would you like to conclude, just as a reminder for the people at home, why we started IT and what's happening with IQ?
Yeah, so here's where we are. Impact Theory was born to really go beyond what we were able to do at Inside Quest, because Inside Quest is rightly so, it's tied to the brand, and the brand only has so much flexibility to become more than its products. And that was something that I really wanted to do with Impact Theory, was be able to start with a clean slate, not be married to a brand that was going to be anything other than a reflection of the ideology that we were trying to put into the world. And as I play the game, no bullshit, what would it take? And this is a game that with this particular ideology I've been playing for a very long time. And for those of you that have heard me talk about Zuda Comics and my vision for that back, which I was not involved in Zuda Comics, but it gave me an answer to whether the vision that had been percolating in my mind about finding undiscovered creators who are out there creating mythology, ideology, turning it into consumable entertainment, but finding ideas that really empowered and helped people become a better version of themselves. And I first started looking at this probably more than 10 years ago, that it could really become something. And so that's what IT is about. We want to be a multi-billion-dollar brand. We are trying to become a very large company. This is not a nonprofit. We have a multi-staged approach to revenue generation and what we're trying to do with our mission, which is to pull people out of the matrix. You can read more about it on impacttheory.com. The reason that we're telling people exactly what we're trying to do is really twofold. One, because who knows how you might be able to help, and we want you guys to know what we're all about. And then two, I'm not worried at all about giving away all of our secrets, because if somebody can out-execute me, then they deserve the prize, not us. And all I believe in execution. Execution is everything. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. I'll gladly tell people exactly what it is. And if you can pull it off better than us, then hey, kudos to you. So yeah, that's what Impact Theory is all about. All right, cool. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us for another episode of After Impact. We're going to be doing this every week. This is us going deeper on the topics and people that are discussed in the episodes of Impact Theory. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and rate and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. It means the world. Remember, we're in phase 1 still. This is all about community building. We're trying to make this community massive. So if this stuff delivers value to your life, please share it. All right, from myself, Tom Bilyeu, and Agent Smith, thank you so much for joining us, and Cindy sends a peace out as well. All right, guys, until next time, be legendary. Later.